It's an extremely tense game for Koneru Humpy, who's playing with the black pieces against Bibisara Assaubayeva. In the first game, Humpy lost and now is in a must-win game here. Bibisara is two-time Blitz champion and a very, very strong player at speed chess. Will Humpy manage to come back? We are off here. What does Bibisara play? She opens with the English opening 1c4, and Humpy takes her time. She's trying to decide what should she do. She goes e5. You can look at the heart rates there. Humpy was at 137. Knight comes to c3, and now Humpy goes f5. She has to play something offbeat in order to throw her opponent off. So there we have f5, and Bibisara pushes her pawn to d4. This is a good move because if you take here, queen takes d4, the pawn on f5 just sticks out as a sore thumb. e4 played here by Humpy, trying to gain more space in the position. a3 played. Now the bishop cannot come here and pin. So that's the reason why Bibisara plays that move. It's 3 minutes plus 2 seconds increment here. And Humpy has 2 minutes 36 seconds while Bibisara has 2 minutes 45 seconds. Humpy once again taking time. One way to continue is to play d6. She goes c6, and maybe her plan is to play pawn to d5. Now, Bibisara can put her bishop on f4 and then play e3, but she decides to play d5. Very ambitious move because she disconnects black from playing d5 and the pawns can no longer be together. So d5 played, and Humpy now has to decide how to develop her queenside pieces because the knight can no longer come out on its natural squares. Although the knight coming out to f6 seems like a very, very natural move to play here. But Humpy plays her bishop to d6. Very, very interesting move. She wants to put it on e5, and if you take here to attack the bishop, then the pawn takes back and black is completely fine. So g3 played by Bibisara. In fact, a very good move would have been g4, striking the center and attacking this pawn. g3, bishop comes out to e5. If you look at how Humpy's played this opening, she's moved her pawns and a bishop, which is not very common, but she's managed to do what she wanted to. Get an unconventional position and throw her opponent off the books. Now, knight comes out to f6. Black starts to develop. Time-wise, Bibisara keeping a solid 20-second lead on the clock. Bishop g2. She also has the much calmer heart rate. Bishop takes c3. Humpy takes this knight. It's a double-edged decision because now white has the doubled pawns. But on the other hand, black has dark squared weaknesses in the camp and white has a dark squared bishop. Queen a5 attacks the pawn on c3. Generally, white doesn't care about this pawn, can castle, because if you take here, it simply gives this bishop a beautiful diagonal at a later point. But Bibisara is taking her time. She goes castles. Good understanding there shown by her. She's castled it out. Now Humpy, will she get greedy and grab the pawn? Well, she does. She does. She knows it's risky. Of course she knows it. But she also knows that now she's attacking the rook and also the c4 pawn. And material in chess is an important thing. Bishop g5 played. Very nice move because if you take queen c4, bishop f6, gf6 and knight to f4 simply gives white a great position. So Humpy castles and now the rook looks at the knight and defends it. It's nice that both players have managed to keep the time around even. Humpy now chops off another pawn. She's 2 pawns up. Wow. But white's development is complete. All her pieces are playing while black is still completely tied up on the queen side. But Bibisara has to now prove what is her compensation, and that is putting a bit of pressure on her. You can look at her. She's slightly tense there. She goes bishop f4. Nice move. The point is to take and then go bishop d6, forking the queen and the rook. So that's the idea that she has. Now Humpy can move the rook away to e8, or she can take the pawn on d5. She is thinking this is her time, and Humpy has had her heart rate at a solid 140. Around 137 to 142 is what she has been at, while Bibisara is around 120. Heart rate often shows us how tensed the player is on the board, and this is a wonderful innovation by the World Chess team at the Armageddon series. C takes d5, pawn takes. Bibisara didn't even think. Actually, c5 could have been an idea with bishop f4 and bishop d6 and knight f4, but she takes back with the pawn, opening up her rook here. And now Humpy is down to 38 seconds in the last couple of moves. She's kind of frozen up. Knight a6 and f3. Look at the speed at which Bibisara is playing. She's now attacking the central structure of black. Humpy pushes her pawn to d6, but in that she weakens the e6 square. But she's made a square for her knight on c5. Knight jumps to g5, wants to enter on e6 perhaps. And pawn pushes, knight jumps to e6. The rook is attacked. Humpy has to take the knight. The knight cannot be tolerated there. Well, she can play rook f7 actually, but she takes it. She has just 15 seconds left. Pawn takes, and now the d6 pawn is hanging. She pushes her pawn forward. Notice the time on Humpy's clock, 17 seconds, while Bibisara has 1 minute 4 seconds left. So she's clearly better. Now she goes bishop h3, a smart move, hitting here, because if the knight moves, the pawn on d5 hangs. It's not easy to hold everything together. Rook takes f3, attacks the queen here. The queen jumps back, and Bibisara now chops off the pawn on f5. A blunder by Humpy, because now the d5 pawn is hanging. She's just blundered it, and now it's completely winning position for white. Will Bibisara play it? Yes, she takes the pawn, and Humpy brings her rook in. Queen to e4 played, and now knight jumps in to attack the queen. But these two bishops combined with this pawn on e6 is just so strong. But one thing that Humpy knows is that she has to play fast. Knight f4 taken, and now actually queen c5 is a nice move because she just needs a draw in this game. No, but she takes on f4, and Humpy safeguards her knight on c5. Rook comes in. The rook moves up to f6. Bishop goes back. Is Humpy ready to trade rook? She goes to f8, and now rook takes f6 is possible to take twice on f6. White is better here, but Bibisara goes queen d5. King moves away to h8, a smart move because you don't want to be in this diagonal. And pawn up to e4. Slowly Bibisara wants to push her pawn to e5. Rook d8 blunder. Rook takes f6. Rook takes d5. Pawn, and then you can check king h7, and pawn takes is completely winning. But instead she goes queen c4. She gives Humpy a chance. Rook takes. Rook takes. And now rook d1 check. Oh, or is the rook on d2? Very difficult to say. Humpy has 10 seconds. Bibisara has 16 seconds. I think she's a bit confused. King g2 played. Check. And she goes back. Humpy cannot draw the game. They are repeating queen d6. But that's a mistake because bishop g4 hits the rook and also makes a square on h3. Rook f2 played. Queen e5 blunder. Now rook f8 check followed by e7 is completely winning. She goes queen c2. Rook d8, and now Humpy is back in the game. She picks up the pawn. She's completely better now. Rook takes d2 was fine. Rook f8 played, but the position is safe because the e6 pawn is gone. Can Humpy win this? She has 12 seconds. Look at how she's managed to keep her time completely intact. Plays pawn to g6. She's winning now. Bishop g4, h5, bishop e2, queen moves in, king h3, and she goes back. Rook f7 played, and now e5, good move, queen f2, she gives a check, king moves back, and knight e4 blunder. Now e6 is winning for white, but instead she gives a check and now plays e6, but now it's a mate, because now the g5 square is not controlled by the rook, so knight g5, king up, and takes, king takes, and mate. Whoa, what a checkmate there by Humpy. She manages to win the game, equalize the score, and takes the match into an Armageddon. What a fighter. She never gives up. Amazing end.